to the mimer that Basi Legani of that year, and we're at the last leg of this mimer, and we're going to go into the Tafshin Memvav mimer. We're holding on page 10, in middle of Ois Vav, line 23, and the page Lamed Hey also. The Rebbe was speaking about that in talking about the Makif Harochik, the level, the very distant Makif that doesn't become revealed from the teacher to the student. So that distant Makif is so far and so non-attainable by the student that we don't even say that after 40 years you're able to acquire it. That's how far it is, that's how distant it is from the student. But the Maimer speaks about the idea of Misholim v'chidos, that through metaphors and through riddles, the level of the Makif Harochit, the level that's very far, can be communicated. So the Rebbe's medayik in the Maimer, the Frierdiker Rebbe, he says, since the words of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe Shab, are very exact, and he compares it, different Abbeim were very exact in the words, other Abbeim were maybe not so exact in the words. So he says that initially, when the Frierdiker Rebbe mentions about the depth of the understanding, the level of the Makif Harochik that becomes revealed, he says, as for example, how it's revealed in metaphors and riddles, Mishaldim v'chidos. Then later on, when he mentions it again, he only mentions Mishalim. He only mentions about metaphors, but he doesn't mention riddles. And that is the question that the Rebbe is now analyzing. Why this change? Why initially does he mention both Mishalim v'chidos, then he stops talking about Mishalim v'chidos? So to answer that, we are holding now on line 23 on page 10, that he's going to first of all explain the difference between a mashal and a chidah. Let's begin. This will be understood by first prefacing the difference between something that's called a metaphor, an analogy, versus a riddle. Mashal, when you're talking about an analogy, though it is something foreign to the idea that's being explained, to the analog, the whole purpose of giving a mashal, of sharing with someone the metaphor, is only to explain the idea. It's to help the idea bring it down in a lower level, in a level that's attainable to someone that without the mashal, he wouldn't be able to understand it. As opposed to a riddle is in a way just the opposite. A riddle wants to conceal. A riddle's purpose is to make you puzzle and wonder and say, what's going on over here? This makes no sense. The mashal is supposed to give you an aha moment. So this is like that. The chida is not that way. So he gives a mashal from a very well-known, he gives an example, a dugma, not a mashal, a dugma from a very known chida in Tanakh, where Shimshon had asked a chida, a riddle, that it said, he was saying that from the eater came out food, and from the strong came out the sweet. He was referring to that he saw a jaw of a lion that was in the field, that there was a nest of bees they had over their honey. So he's saying that the eater, which is a lion, became food, and from the strong, which is the lion, became something sweet, which is the honey. So when you're talking about a statement like that, it's not something that helps you understand the seichel. Not only is it something foreign to the idea, it's something that's not understood with one's mind. It's the opposite of intellect. That is complete concealment. Now, based on understanding this difference between a mashal versus a chida, a metaphor, an analogy versus a riddle, now we'll be able to understand this difference of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The is top of page Lamed Vav. That's why at the beginning of the matter it's mentioned metaphors and riddles. Since we're talking about the descent of the light, that the Oiris of Lamata Mata, the Intachlis, descends so low, even until the Sholshlub Satmeis, that's how low it descends. The godly light is in a total concealment. Just like a concept that's concealed in a riddle, that a riddle is the total opposite of understanding. It makes no sense. It's completely nonsensical. But in the continuation, the matter he mentions only metaphors, only analogies, and not riddles. Because later on it's also speaking about the stories in the Torah. In Torah, it's not applicable to say the idea of a riddle that's the opposite of seichel. Because the entire Torah are called names of Hashem. Meaning, it's not like Chas v'Shalom, Hashem concealing himself in klippas. Even though he's concealed in Torah, it's not the same type of concealment. This means even when in the Torah it speaks about untoward, unwanted things. Like in Parshas B'Shalach it says, Bal Tzvoin. Uparoi Hikriv. It talks about Avodah Zarah Bal Tzvoin, and it talks about Paroi became close, but really the meaning, as we know, is that he brought the Yidden closer. Even these negative things, the way they are in Torah, they're considered Hashem's names. Names shows on revelations and hamshacha from Hashem. Therefore, in Torah, it's not applicable the idea of a riddle. That's an opposite of seichel. That Torah Chas v'Shalom is the opposite of Elokus. Heaven forbid. The only thing that you could use when you're talking about the stories in the Torah is the concept of metaphors and analogies. Torah is also called the early mashal. It's specifically called a mashal, not a chida, because of this reason, because a mashal is about the revelation of something higher, but not chas v'shalom, the opposite of that high thing. And the Maimer concludes that the idea of the Ein Sof is higher and higher to no end. In other words, this is further past Perik Tazayin. It's referring to the essence of the light. It's not at all in the category of revelation, and it doesn't become drawn down at all in the world. It becomes concealed and subsumed in Hashem's essence. This level is called a treasure. Just like a treasure is closed off and hidden from the eyes of anyone that may see it, so to Hashem's essence is closed off and concealed. Since the drawing down the revelation of the supernal treasure is only for the sake of being victorious in the war to defeat the opponent, so it's understood. All of this, the highest, most concealed, most essential level, is about coming down below to no end. You have to come down to the place that the opponent is there, that you have to battle him and to defeat him. Through this we affect that even down here below to no end should be drawn down, reveal the level that's higher and higher to know it. That's the general revelation of Mashiach's times. So the Rebbe says, but we don't have to wait for Mashiach's times. Those who taste of the foods of Shabbos before Shabbos are meriting life. The same thing, we merit life to be able to taste of the revelation of Mashiach's times now as well. Similar to this is drawn down, becomes revealed also at the end of the time of Golos. This idea of the treasure and the revelation of the Eirin Sof Lamayla and Ketz that comes down to Lamata Mata Tachlis is the revelation of the inner part of the Torah in the teachings of Chassidus in the latter generations. Like is brought down as and the 600th year of this sixth millennium, in other words, from the year 5500, Yispatchun Tarei, the Chachmas Le'ela Tabalam Zayin will open up the gates of the wisdom above, and Mabui, the Chachmas L'Satachulu, and the flows of water of the wisdom from below. The Simonach, and you know the sign for this is what it says on Parshas Noach, B'shnas Sheish Meis Shana L'Chayin Noach, in the 600th year of the life of Noach, Nivku Kol Mayanois Toim Rabba, was split open all the well springs of the deep. The same thing, all the wisdoms from below will come, and also the windows of heaven opened up. Even though from the year 5500 there's already the opening of these wisdoms, but this is only something like the revelation of Mashiach's times. The main revelation of above and above to no end, and also below to no end, will be in the future. Like it says, then Hashem will be a king over the entire earth. And that day, Havaya Echad and his name is referring on, always we know it's referring to the revelation and the expansion of the light, as the Frierdiker Rebbe says in that Maimer. That will be one, there'll be the joining of Eirin Sof Lamayla the Ketz Lamata Mata Adin Tach.